Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Okay, great. This is Mohammed Yamama. If you're new to this call, you haven't attended the last one. I'm the Windows Phone technical evangelist for Microsoft Middle East and Africa, and this is the second of a lot of sessions to come, online sessions to come regarding the roadmap for Windows Phone, covering all the features and how to develop, starting from design until building the apps, and leveraging the new platform of Windows Phone 8. Last time we talked about we introduced Windows Phone 8, the SDK, and we talked a little bit about the high level things about the phone. Today we're having a guest speaker, Mahmoud Moussa. He's the technology solution professional for Microsoft Center of Expertise in designing apps, and actually apps and like design and building apps. He's a great guy. So he's our guest speaker today, and he's going to deliver the session about how to design Windows Phone applications from structure and best practices and so forth. So I'm recording this session for future reference, and let me introduce Mahmoud. And hi, Mahmoud, please take over.
So thanks, Yamama, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Mahmoud Moussa. I'm a technology solution professional for device apps, which means I'm covering mainly Windows 8. And at some point of time, because of Yamama, I'm covering Windows Phone 8. So I'll be your host today. I'll be talking about a different best practice about how you think about your app design, starting from your backend, how you should plan it till you reach your front end, and how you can think about what are the design patterns that I could use for designing my solution. So let's get started. So I've been working with quite a large set of applications so far. So I have an internal application, we call it CID, or Center of Expertise Impact Dashboard. It's a small application that we use internally on top of Windows 8. Its main purpose of managing our business, submitting a trip, managing activities, working with pipeline and impact and things like that. Working with another internal app, we're calling it the Mia Cloud. We call it the Mia Cloud Wind Tracker, which is another application we've built on top of SharePoint to be running on both Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. And I have my personal blog, which is http://blogs.msdn.com/p-metroapps, which I'm pushing most of the guideline, most of the code I'm writing. You'll find a lot of interesting stuff about Windows Phone 8, about Windows 8, about WinRT in general. I've built a quick reusable control. We call it the Modern UI Toolkit. Its main purpose of supporting of charts like bar chart, bar chart, column chart, and these kind of charts to be used from Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. So someone is having a problem with the audio? Okay. And another project, which is called the Jupyter WinRT, which is a very big project, around 150 different controls, all published to the Codeplex, an open source, so people can at any point of time go and grab this control and start adding it to their both Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 applications. And my most famous part, which is called the bar chart control set, it was one and only Windows 8 charting control at some point of time. And now it can be working on both Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. So let's get started. So I'll be talking about, for our agenda today, I'll be talking about the software design methodology. Which way is the better when you think about a Windows Phone 8? I will say agile from now, while it's still quite early. Back-end planning. How can I think about where can I store my data on a server? Should I think about Windows 8? Should I think about WCF Web Services? Or should I think about SharePoint? Should I use Azure? I'll be discussing quickly all the different approaches and how you can use it. Then we will be talking about the different layouts, how you can use what is the meaning of a grid, what is the meaning of a stack panel, and how you can use it. Plus, then I will talk businessly about how you can bind the data and building some sort of a business application together with Windows 8. Working with images internally inside the application is quite different from Windows Phone 7 and any previous application we've dealt with before. when you can use controls and slides, and what is the difference between transitions and animation, and how we can build the storyboarding for our application. So let's get started. So when I say software methodology, I would say agile, 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 agile. Why agile? There are a lot of who are actually people are familiar with agile software methodology, Nicole? Can someone help me? Okay, so that's one. He's sitting right beside me, for sure he knows it. No, actually, agile software methodology, it's a different way of thinking about the application, because simply you're assembling a team, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 different people. Take an idea. For example, I need to build an application for managing, let's say, metro stations, like the one we're discussing today, and me and Shihab, me and Yamama. So this is an idea. So what are the user expectations from this app? We build something that we call it a product backlog, or a project backlog. This project backlog, it's a different paper that we go and type. We need this user to be able to search for where is the next metro station. We need to allow the user to use the map for this kind of search. The user can submit that there is a new problem in a specific metro station. People can say that there will be a poll for a specific metro station. So this is what we call it a product backlog. Then the team sit together and build, okay, we as a team, we need to develop this application. These are the different stories we currently have. They do something called weights, which means each one of these applications will say, okay, for developing this task, we will need to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. For developing the next task, we'll do 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once we did this, we build something called prototyping of the application. We take a paper and a pen and start doing a mock-up for the application itself and start developing an application. But it's a very long discussion that I can talk in a single call. Maybe we can have a 10 hours call to discuss this long discussion about Agile. But why do I recommend this kind of doing the software methodology? It's because of this. In Agile, you have the ability to build something called a sprint. A sprint means every 2 weeks you are developing something new and publishing to the application. The second option is your application is always alive. People who are familiar with mobile programming and desktop programming, once you leave the application without updates, user first will get bored. Okay, I've seen enough. I don't want to use this application anymore. The second thing is you will find that one of the competitors took your idea, enhanced it, added new features, and then published it as a new application. You need to make always sure that your application is alive. People are attached to it by adding a new feature every now and then. So Agile will give you this kind of option because your application is not following a long software life cycle. No, you can add something new every 2 weeks. I still don't know what modern UI is. I don't know what are the capabilities of Windows Phone is. Go for Agile because there is a lot of new enhancements. I'm sure that Yamama will cover many of them, but I'm sure also that he will miss a lot and we will miss a lot. And every day you will come with a new idea that you can use on your phone. So don't stick to a specific design. Try to be as agile and flexible as possible when designing your application, because this will help you a lot when in adding the new features. When you are thinking about an application for a customer, the customers don't know what are the capabilities of Windows 8. So he will tell you, I need to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. These are the features of the solution. But the fact is, after a while, he will come and generate more ideas when he sees the capabilities of the platform. I can do this. Wow, that's really amazing. So how we can customize this kind of area? I'll share with you a quick story. I've been working with a bank on developing a Windows 8 application. The customer told me, this is the design that we're looking for. This is the UI, this is the layout. I told them, just hold on. Let us redesign this layout based on the features that we have on the system. And what we did is completely revamp the whole application. Now the customer was like thinking about 4 features. We give him an idea of developing around 100 features inside this application, and he's still building on it. This could be applied again on both Windows Phone and Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8. Good. So this is why I would choose Agile. I would recommend Agile for every one of you in general. But I would recommend that you go and read more about the Agile software methodology, because it's not a small approach. It's a very big approach that we can really discuss in 10 hours, not in a quick call. Then we can go straight away to the Windows Phone design, the thing that people are actually interested in. So before we start, we need to be talking about the principles of Windows 8 design. So when you're thinking about Windows 8, think about a few things. Okay, so we need to make sure that your application is responsive. You don't want the user to click on a button and wait for a while to see that there is an action have been taken, or they can get lost. Okay, someone is playing with my slides. They can get lost on the presentation itself. Focus on the primary tasks. For example, you are developing an application to allow the user manage their activities, for example. When you're doing something like this is the main task of your application. Don't start adding extra features that they don't actually use. Do a lot with a very little things. For example, don't think a lot about the design and graphics and these kind of stuff. No, try to reduce all the different UI elements just to make sure that the content that the user is looking for inside your app is the main purpose of the application. Use the white space. When you have a white space, don't ignore it. Try to make your text bigger. Try to make as much as possible of the screen itself. And use the canvas, for example. Don't ignore the different corners of the application and different controls. And let's discuss each one of these in more details. So, first of all, typography. I would normally, when we talk about the design, I would normally say I will build the logo for the application to take the big area of my screen. And I will start at, for example, a small text that will cover its logo. Then I will add a big picture of someone standing holding some components of my products, and then I'll start typing my text. In Windows 8, no. The user is not expecting to see the person who is carrying the application. He does not expect to see a welcome text. He's expecting to see the content itself. He's coming here for a purpose. So use the type or the fonts to display your data. In Windows 8, there are two major fonts. The first one is called SIGUI Lite and SIGUI UI, and the other one is called Calipari, which is the other one that people can use a lot when designing their applications. So, Alive in Motion, which is another principle that you need to follow when you're talking about your application design. So, first of all, don't let the user click on a button and wait forever to get a response. If you are going to face a problem communicating with a web service with a huge amount of data, no, just display a progress bar. Please wait while doing something. Don't let the text pop up on the screen suddenly and here's your data has been refreshed. Try to think about the animations and transitions of the content going in and out of your design. Always use the content to improve the usability of the application. So, for example, don't design a component inside your application that contains nothing. Always use your content for how we can make a beautiful UI design. Don't let again pop-upping from one screen to the other. Always think about doing an animation from one screen to the other, and try to use the gestures of the application to navigate between one area and another to make your application more in motion and more alive. This is not a web application, guys. You're having the power of a device that has dual core processor, 1 GB RAM. I was dreaming to own a PC with this power. So think about using these features on the phone to develop your application. So always think about using the content before Chrome. And here, that's what we call in Windows 8, content before Chrome. Here it's content, not Chrome. But the whole idea is use the content to display its data. So the content itself, for example, when you are trying to make something looks nice, use your content to display it. Use the content of the page itself to display it. Okay, so don't let your application contain things that it's not meant to be a direct answer for a user inquiry about a specific page on your application itself. So let's back again for our principles. Clean, light, open, and fast, which maps to your application does not contain a lot of things that you don't need. Light, as fast as possible, it can be loaded. Open, the user can navigate from one area to another as fast as possible. And fast, very responsive. Don't let the user click on something and wait for it. Celebrate the typography. Use your typography for design. Don't just use a typography for displaying the content. No, use the content as a decoration inside your application, alive in motion, which means that your application is always alive. Content before Chrome, don't think about the different ingredients, don't think about 10 colors using the application. Maybe you can use 1 or 2 or 3 graphics to display its data. Authenticating digitally, which means try to use your data as its main content. So, as you can see, this is what we call it a sample of how we can think about a Windows 8 design. These are all following the guidelines. How can people think about displaying the user content? How we thought about our start screen, how we thought about the different ways of displaying the calendars. In all the different scenes, it looks the same. The content is always the same. So for now, this is the whole principle that you need to follow. Let's go and discuss this more into details. But before I do so, let's take some questions. So what we've been discussing. Okay, so I believe that there is a long chat thread that's been going on. So what we've been discussing is about software design methodology. Second option is we're discussing about different principles that we have in Windows Phone. And now we will start working on the development part for the application. So I believe that Yamama has some questions. That's why he wears his headphones now. I believe that Yamama, you're going to ask some questions?
I'm good, I guess. People just want us to turn on the video, so let's turn on the video for them. There's a problem with the camera. Sorry, guys. Just for now, any questions so far? To make sure that.
So I turned on the video. So
any questions so far, or should we move on? Okay, great. No questions yet. I think we can move on. You can find all the tools at dev.windowsphone.com. That's when you download the SDK. You'll find all the tools that Mahmoud is going to talk to us about that in a few moments. And you can find on dev.windowsphone.com/design. You'll find the principles if you want to go and review that as well. So just yes, I think Mahmoud is going to cover that in a moment.
Yeah, so I'll stop my video because I'm using my Surface, so it's quite hard to hold my device on to show you my camera. So let's move for the next part, which is starting developing an application. So before you start, what you need to go is getting the tools. So you will find here a URL that when you navigate to it, you'll be able to download the SDK. Yes, it is, sort of, and I'm using it for development. It's actually Surface, not Slate. Sorry, Slate, not Surface. So back again to the components. So we were talking about the dev tools, what we have. So when you go to dev.windowsphone.com/en-us/download SDK, it gives you the option of downloading all the different components that you are going to use for developing a Windows Phone application, which consists of 3 different major parts. The plane, which is the one responsible for the UI design for developers who hate to work with the UI design, like Yamama. A second kind of developers who love to write the code, okay, then go for Visual Studio. Visual Studio is a very powerful tool with a lot of features that you can use when developing your application. And if you don't own 920 like Yamama, you own something like mine, which is a very, very powerful phone, you can use it for testing your application, or you can include it within these tools. You'll find the emulator itself. The emulator requires a Core i5 or i7 processor, anything with Hyper-V support, that you can use it for testing your application. Okay, exactly. So I found another lazy developer talking about drag and drop. I'm one of the laziest developer you'll ever see in your entire life. So you will get to see my code and how I'm writing code. So let's move on. So again, so Blend is a tool that you use for doing the graphical design, which is, at most of the time, it's basically Blend. It's basically XAML code. People who have worked with WPF, people who have worked with things like WPF, another tool like Silverlight, Windows Phone 7, Windows 8, Windows Phone 8, they are all using the same language for the front end, which is XAML code. When we talk about XAML, we're talking about expression, and we're talking about Blend. So Blend is a very powerful tool to allow you working with animations, working with graphic design. Please, when you are working and stuck with the design, use it when you're designing your application. The second tool is, the second tool that you are going to use is the code creation, which is a complete separation between what you can do from a UI perspective and what you can do from the back-end perspective. So from the UI, well, is it a user-aware, is it interface design only or not? That's one of the questions I got. I would say yes, because there is no end license and inside the C# files inside it. For people who are as lazy as me, if I don't find end license, I will not write code. So I will need this kind of stuff to complete my application. That's why Visual Studio is always my tool. And at the end of the day, it's all a part of one package. So you cannot let the graphic design person use Visual Studio to design his application. He can use Blend, which is only about UI elements, to design his application, and let the back-end components all to be designed by you. Okay, so I have another question. Can someone explain? So I'll ask a favor for you, Miriam. Whenever you're seeing questions, just try to ask it for me because I can barely see this kind of discussions. So that's all the different components that you need. Design styles and programming. I'll be going a deep technical here. When we're talking about designing an application, there are two major design patterns that I would love that you could follow. If you can follow MVVM, which is called Model View View Model, it's an amazing component that you can use to completely isolate the graphic design from the back end till the front end. So for example, when we say that I need this application to have this kind of prototyping. So you are designing the application on a paper first. Take your design, give it for the graphic designer. We need to have this text box. We would go in to have this component, this component, this component, and you are completing the different controls that you need to display its data. It's back to the graphic designer to choose how we are going to place this kind of stuff. For your case, this is a complete isolation of a design model to the front-end model. So I believe that, Yamama, if you can share with us a link for MVVM pattern during the thread of conversation, this would be a great option for many people here. And I will start by planning your backend. So, okay, so when we're talking about designing an application, you will need at any point of time to isolate your backend to support the different platforms that you have. For example, I need to develop an application running on Windows 8, and at the same time to be running on Windows Phone 8, running on Android, running on iPad, running on whatever device that you need to. So you need to design your backend as much as possible to make it as easy for everyone to develop. So the first option I normally use is called WCF with Entity Framework 2.0, 45.0. People here are familiar with Entity Framework and WCF? Well, so WCF is called...
Yeah, you can give us a brief...
Yeah, sure, good. So WCF is called Windows Communication Foundation, exactly. So Windows Communication Foundation, it's like web services, but it can give you a different endpoint. So for example, when I need to communicate with Adobe, with Android, I cannot use the WCF. I need to communicate only with web services. So I can tell WCF, make an output that is web services. When I'm talking with, for example, iPhone, I can say, for iPhone, please use JSON query as an output. Whatever that you want to design your application with, you can use WCF for being your front end or the exposure from your back end to your devices. Entity Framework, I would consider it as a code generation tool. It's amazing when it comes to running an application as fast as possible. I told before I'm a very lazy developer, so whenever I can find a way to develop or to regenerate my code, I normally use it. So let me share with you my desktop for a second, and show you how can I use the entity framework and WCF to build my backend. So can I confirm that you all can see my desktop now?
Still loading.
Yeah.
Okay, it's good.
So let's start a quick project. So here, for example, is one of the projects I've been working here internally, which is I called you earlier the kid.
Will you share with us the code?
Yep, I will.
I mean, after the session for people to reuse?
Sure, we can do this. Not the all component, but at least some part of it when we can. Good. So, you're in mute, I believe. No one hears you. So, in this project,
Can you all see this?
sorry.
Can you all see the screen, guys?
So, good. So, this is one of the, you can say, call it one of the biggest projects that you can achieve with all Windows Phone and Windows 8. So, in this project, I'm using Entity Framework as my backend, where I can simply go up to my database, double click on it, and click Generate Model. It will simply import all the different tables I have from my backend and will add it automatically into this diagram. I can say from Entity Framework, please use this code generation templates like the one you are seeing here to generate all the different entities from my code, which is really a massive time saver. Instead of just going and writing this kind of methods one by one, which will take a very long time from your side, you can use this code generation template to make your data or your backend fully exposed inside your application within only a few minutes. So it's a very time saver. I would really recommend you to search for an article. They call it BOCO Entity Framework WCF. BOCO stands for Plain Old Common Language Runtime Object. It's really takes your database model and build the different classes for it if you are going to build the direct mapping. Or you can use the Entity Framework to customize the different models you have or the different entities you have to generate all the code that you need for the backend within a few minutes. So it's very time saver. Think about this approach when you don't know what your backend would be and you will need to know how you can customize the design. I can share with you some of my code samples for achieving this kind of solution, which would be, as Yamam I recommend. But the output of this solution is really fast, and I already published a set of services now on the cloud, so you can use it for thinking about your application design or designing some samples that one we're going to display me and Yamama today. So let's go again for our presentation. So that was the first option, which we call it the WCF. The second option you have, which is very a quick way of developing an application, it's called SharePoint as a backend. Go to your SharePoint, navigate to the path I'm writing down there, which is called _VTI bring list data. It will import all the data from SharePoint to your application. So, do you know SharePoint, guys? Is anyone familiar with the SharePoint? Okay. So I'll skip that option. I do. Okay. So SharePoint is some sort of a portal for managing all the different applications inside Microsoft. It has its own exposed OData standard that you can use very quickly inside your SharePoint, inside your Windows Phone application. I'll skip that for not to go so technical. Another option, which is called the Azure Mobile Apps Kit. The Azure Mobile Apps, it's a tool that you can use, guys, for developing a very quick app. You can go for the Azure, the Windows Azure. I need to create a new mobile application. I will call it, for example, بيقول as one of the samples that we have in Egypt. And you can go, I will create a database model. So it will create for you the database, create for you the web services. How do you want the user to authenticate? Do you want to make it something open for the public? Do you want it to integrate with Windows Phone and Windows 8? And it will automatically generate all the code for you without you touching anything. Okay. So that was for the back-end planning, which is quite not related to the UI. Let's go and talk about the UI design. So I believe you cannot see my slides. Okay, so always think when you are designing an application. Now, I've designed with you quickly a back-end and different entities we currently have. Always think when you're designing, use a paper before you use a tool. So I had a very nice...
Hey guys, we've got a lot of inquiries about the deck. Can you all see the deck, or is it just a couple of people? So please confirm if you can see the deck. Okay, great. So please, if you can see the deck, can you please rejoin the call? Thanks. Mahmoud, I think you can go on.
Okay, good. So I would think about designing on paper before you're working with the tools. What I normally do is I've had a very nice block note, contains a lot of squares. I use this block note when I'm thinking about my application. So think about this way. In PowerPoint, there is something called the storyboarding component. You can use it for building the different scenarios of the application, where I'm going to navigate from what to where, what are the different components of my application, how can I do the navigation. It's really a useful and a very fast going forward application if you're thinking about one. So once you've done with your paper, defined all the different screens that you are going to use, think about your navigation. So how I'm going to navigate from one page to the other is something that you need to take a decision for as early as possible before you go deep into your code. Because if you lost track of your navigation, you will rarely lose track of how you are going to build the application. This is a very funny part. So I'm a colorblind person. I'm what they call me a very hard coder most of the time. It's a disaster for me when people ask me, for example, when I go for my manager, please design an application for us about, for example, center of expertise. It was a disaster. I will choose, for example, red, and I will add beside red blue, and beside it a green. So choosing the color is not a very good option for me. So I found a very useful tool I decided to share with you. It's called color.adobe.com. It's amazing component, online web interface. All you need is, for example, my application theme would be blue. Exactly. So once you say, for example, blue, it will have all the different components, colors that you can use in designing your Windows Phone application as quickly as possible. So
can you please take us through a demo of cooler.adobe.com?
Yep, sure, I will. So let me share with you my desktop.
Please guys confirm when you can see the desktop.
So in Color, you can go and create, for example, choose my main color theme would be, for example, green. It will automatically choose all the different colors that will match this green inside the application. Only 5 different colors. Plus you can choose how do you want to display these different colors. So for example, in most of the, what we call it, the modern interface, you'll find there are a lot of unique colors together. So trade would be an option. Complementary, which are completing each other, would be another option. Compound shades, if you're thinking about, I would rarely use shades because I will need this kind of stuff to be used for my text and things like that. So I can use, for example, if my application color would be green, then all my text would be in orange, and all, for example, my images will be displayed in violet. That would be this kind of mix. I will take these different colors together, add it into my application, and start designing the application as quickly as possible with these kind of tools. Okay, so this is again for people who are colorblind like me. So if you are not colorblind and you are good in choosing colors, don't depend on this. I will go back for the slides again. So this is a sample of what we're calling it the detailed page. So it's a quick pivot page. Thank you. So thank you for the share. For now, we are going to start talking about a sample. So this is for us what we call it a pivot page. Pivot page has a header, has a pivot viewer, a picture that will display its content, text that will hold all the different components we have inside the application, and we have at the bottom what we call preparation time and the value for the preparation time. So the quickest way when you are thinking about its design, it will contain, pivot page, and it will contain its items inside. This is the template that you can find available inside the Visual Studio template, the one we are going to show right now. So in each XAML, sorry, excuse me. So there are inside of any Windows 8 application, there are a XAML file and a set of objects that is related to it. So the XAML file, it's just what we call it. It's as close as possible to HTML and XML files that you can use for displaying your data. So it follows the same structure of an XML file with the different components lying inside it. And each screen should display a specific item, and it is used for rendering the item inside the application itself. So how we can use this for developing the application? So to complete this, we've built something that we call it Contoso book, this header, which is the header of the application. Then we have the pivot title, which will be this area, or pivot actually item headers, which would be the different components we have on our Contoso. We will have the image, which is just an image layout added to my page. I have a very big text block, which will take a style of a caption or something to display the content of the application. We'll have another text block to display the prep time, which would be just a text value, a text box, and another one will be displaying the value. Okay, so this is one of the ways of doing the design. Just drag everything, add to a single page, and start working by simply, for example, identifying the different margins of the components that will be added to the page. This would be one of the ways. Just drag the image, just drag the text block, just drag the text block, just drag another text block, and add the content. If I'm going to design this and I want to make my page as maintainable as possible, I will use something that we call it a stack panel. So a stack panel, its main responsibility is to hold the items one by one inside the page. So I will say for the stack panel, add the first row, which would be my image. Then add another text block, which would be the big text block for the data.
So like a stack panel is more of kind of a table with one column where every row is an item, so that you can't have things next to each other.
Exactly. So yes, so a stack panel, it's typically a table, as Yana said, it's a table with a set of items added one by one after each other. You know what? Let's take a sample and see how we can use this in action. So let me again share with you my desktop, and let's design quickly an app. So let's go for the desktop. So we can say File, and let's create a new Windows Phone 8 application. So I can go here, create a new project. You'll find that I'm installing Windows Store, which is Windows 8, the Windows, the web, the cloud services, which is a lot of project types. All I care about is what we call it, the Windows Phone apps. So in Windows Phone apps, you can see, for example, I will have a quick application that will contain only the different components we use for just building the application right now. I can use another template, which is the different data bounds, so it can support you by changing one data source to a one that is connected to the WCF model we used earlier to build a very quick application. You have the panorama view, which you can actually navigate from one page to the other. You have a pivot page like the one we saw earlier. It's like tabs for the older version of Windows, where you can click on the first tab to display a specific set of icons, click on the second tab to display another set of icons. You have DirectX, which you're looking for more of building a game kind of thing. You have XNA, which is the older one for building the games. And you have HTML5 for people who hate XAML and C# and love WinJS and HTML5. They can use this kind of applications.
Just to a quick note, using JavaScript and HTML5 is for native development. That's for Windows 8. For Windows Phone 8, you kind of consume it through a web browser.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot for the add-on. So let's go now for developing a quick application. I will call this session samples. This would be the name of my application. I will choose my target to be Windows Phone 8. Then click OK. It will automatically create a quick application for me, which will contain on the right side the designer or a screen or how I'm going to see my page, like the one you're seeing right now. On the right side, you will see the XAML component that is actually contained inside my page. And here, you'll find that every solution you are going to create will contain three important things. So you have the assets folders, the one responsible for all the different images that you are going to hold, or the different files that you are going to hold inside the application. You have your resources, which will contain all the different strings you have, and what we call it the app.xaml. So app.xaml is the one responsible for initializing your app, managing the different. For people who are familiar with ASP.NET, it was called global.asx. It was responsible for holding the main context of the application itself. So the main page is the one that we are currently designing. So let's go and right-click on this page and choose Open in Blend.
And just for the app.xaml and what's inside the Solution Explorer, we'll even cover that in more detail in the next session when we start building apps.
Good. So now what I did is just right-click on your application and choose to open it on XAML. Every page, this is for me, is a page. Its content is something called, what we can read here is the root layout, is called a grid. Okay, so grid, it means that it will contain rows and columns at any point of time. You can go using your design, add, for example, extra rows to your different grid, and choose where are my components will be added inside my page. Okay, so I just clicked and added a set of rows. You will find here on the left side that I can have one of two options. I can type here the text that will contain an asterisk, or I can type a text that will contain pixel, which we call the logged view. It will help you in designing a full Windows 8 application that you need some areas to be automatically expanded, like the one that will contain a huge amount of text for the scroll viewer. Or you can, for example, I need to drag and drop. So let's go for adding a button. Let's add this button to the root layout. So it automatically have been added when you lock for the right side. It have been automatically added as the first row and the first column. Let's change this to be 1. So the button have been moved from one grid X section to the other. 2, it will be moved from one grid section to the other. That's the main purpose of using a grid when designing your application. So let's add another button. What happened is it has been added again for the first section of the page, which is the first row and the first column. If we change this to go, for example, for column number 3, it will automatically add the row, the text button for the button number 3. This is the main purpose of using a grid, aligning every location of everything for every single components we have. But that was the definition of a grid. Let's start again, and this time we will need to use, instead of a grid, we will need to add first a stack panel. So in a stack panel, you can just choose to take it all the width of the screen, make it maximum. When you click on this button, it means take the auto width. So when I choose horizontal alignment to be stretched, which means take the full width of the component. When you choose the vertical alignment to take the full width of the component, this means it will take all the spaces I have if I didn't fix a specific height. So now I have added a stack panel inside my grid. Let's start adding items. So I will go and add a button. The button has been added to my stack panel automatically and took the maximum width of the control. Let's add another one. Can you see the difference of the different items you've added? The first option, when we use the grid, it has been added to a specific row and column. In a stack panel, item has been added one by one inside my screen. Nice stuff. Let's start off.
We have a question here.
Sure.
So you could use, you could compare this to designing a website with CSS positioning?
Typically. So HTML5, you have, or HTML actually, you're using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. In .NET, or XAML and C#, you are having XAML files as an option 1. Beside it, you have something called the styles, which you typically map to CSS, and C#, which maps to your JavaScript. So it's all about how you are going to achieve your design. The app that we are going to build now, which I believe we're going to extend our session for at least 20 more minutes after the 1 hour, the one that we are going to build right now is an option for you to take the advantage of using the XAML file, using the C++ C# file, and using the style files for completing the design of an application. So let's take a quick look by changing this template instead of just being vertical and make it horizontal. So all the different components and location have been changed again to be the different columns. That was just as quickly as possible designing a page inside your application. Let's take it and then let's back again for our design, and let's walk more about designing principles. So for now, your XAML display elements, as we agreed, you can add a grid. Inside the grid, you can add all the different components. If you took a look about the display elements properties, like the one that we used inside the XAML file, you can see that everything we are doing in the design is mapped to a specific property in Visual Studio. So it's really as fast as possible when you, for example, find that there is something wrong and you are not familiar with working with the UI, you can go click on the item, navigate to its properties, and start modifying its width and height and all the different values that you need on the XAML straight away. So back to a deep technical discussion. So all the different controls inside XAML, inside Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 are derived from something called the framework element. The framework element is the base of everything. It contains its own data context, which is a mapping for the data binding. You'll find that a control is inherited from the framework element. At this point, I'll stop for a second where you are having one of two options. You can have a content control, which means it will have some control has been added inside it, or it can be something that will hold only a specific value. Like, for example, a comparison between a text box and a button. So the button can contain an image. The text box will contain only text. So this will display all the different controls between things that have been driven from a content control and things that have been driven from the controller straight away. Text block, it's not a control. It's a way of editing a text. So it will be automatically inherited for framework element. when you are designing an app, you will need to know this architecture because, again, I'm a lazy developer. So whenever you're thinking about designing the application, I will need to write as minimal code as possible and make sure that my use is reusable from one application to the other. So I would normally build my own text blocks for some reasons that, for example, instead of each time I need to type, click here to delete the text, or what they call it, the watermark kind of text block, I will need to inherit from a text block and customize to match my own requirements. So just keep in mind this architecture. You might need when designing from one app to the other sooner or later. So for an element inside the XAML file, you will have a pivot item. You will have it, which is called the recipe. It will have a grid. This grid will contain a row definition. Row definition means display the number of rows we have inside our grid. So, for example, this one would say the height, which means this one height would be 240, which is pixels. So this size will never change. The other one would be an asterisk, and the other one, third, would be an auto. The difference between these two is asterisk means it will take the size of the content, it will keep stretching for it till it reaches its maximum. Auto, if the content requires more space, it can take as much as it wants. As a comparison between these two, the first row will contain the picture, the second one will contain the text. So now I've added an image and I give it a name, and I switch this content to fill a uniform to fill. You'll find that I didn't set anything related to the grid, which means that this image will be added to row number 0, column number 0. But then I need to add direction of a text block. I need to add a text block, so which is on another row. It will automatically add it to a grid.row equal 1, which means go for the row number 1 inside the grid. For the stack panel, I'm setting it to be on a grid row number 2. This will help us generating the design that we saw earlier of the different elements. Just a general rule in Windows Phone 8, it's called the rule of 12. Don't let everything attached as much as possible to the edge of the screen. Try to avoid setting everything to the edge of the screen. So let everything as much as possible have at least a 12 pixels margin from the left side, and you can go and multiply it as much as possible, 12 by 12 by 12, based on your design. But don't let everything touch the edge of the screen, because from a usability perspective, the user would be expecting that if it touches the edge of the screen, it means that we will need to scroll between the left and right of the component. So while actually this was not going to happen, and sometimes these edges would be unreadable areas. So there was a question was what was the difference between normal text block and a button, and the button is the event handlers? No, it's not just this. So text block will contain an area of displaying text-only components. The button, both can have the click event. But for example, for the button, you will have multiple states. So for example, when you are clicking on it, it will have to flicker to change its color to show you that there is something has been clicked. In the text block, you will not have something like that, unless you customize it to add an extra animation, an extra states of the controls. And button can have its content to be, for example, text, image. It can be even item inside a drop-down list. So buttons are fully customizable to require your need. Text block, its main purpose is displaying text, or based on the different styles you have. Okay, so I hope I answered your question. And I think there is another answer, button is a button. So that's another fact, that buttons is a button, and text block is used like labels. But sometimes you can customize the buttons to ignore the event handler and to be used as label as well, for just letting everything be clickable inside the application. So applying the styles, we didn't show you the difference between the XAML file and the style file, which is something I'm going to show you as soon enough. You can go and define, for example, that the full color of the text box to be a white and the font size to be a 12. And you can say for the text, another text block, make the 4 colors white and the 4 colors to be light gray. The problem with this would be this problem. This would how your design look at the beginning, and it really looks really cool. But if I